Mhm. If you've had any other kind of cool birds in migration thus far in the month of April, I know there's been some kind of hot rarities just in the last week or so. Feel free to throw those in the chat as we kind of get ready here this evening. I do want to thank you guys for joining us for our special evening virtual here on our Echoes of the Night Sky, and kind of a look at bird migration at night. As we have some other folks that are kind of still joining us, I'm going to share my screen here, and I'm kind of not as experienced as this. If you've been in a few virtual, you have Whitney. She's kind of the expert here. So I'm going to try to help everybody out. And hopefully you guys can see that. And feel free, you can always put in questions in the chat. If I don't see you, if you got some questions, raise your hand. Or feel free to unmute yourself. So I like to kind of run things real informal. So Jim's had some Tennessee and Nashville warblers. And so all those guys are arriving now. And I was thinking about migration just an hour ago. Well, I think about migration every day, being obsessed with birds. Susan Gray, Prothonotarians are back at the Wilson Boardwalk. I was just wondering, that is actually probably just a couple days early for them. That's amazing to be able to hear that they're coming back. They say that something like 2 billion birds are going to migrate in the spring every year coming northbound. And then you're looking at about 4 billion birds are coming from basically from Canada down to Mexico in the fall. And that's, Canada is kind of the neotropical nursery for all these great birds. And so as they get done breeding, you have 4 billion now that'll make that journey southward. And folks don't realize that so many of these birds are migrating at night, and it just goes kind of unseen. And it's for me personally, as a birder, I've been birding for those that don't know, me, Brad Bumgardner, executive director of Indiana Audubon. I've been a bird watcher since I was 9 years old, and I remember going out and following Bud Starling around that Waukegan State Park, because he was the inn manager at the Potawatomi Inn, and kind of learn about all the different birds, and really not really understanding the full magnitude of bird migration. And now today, some 30 years in the birding, this is probably the nocturnal migration and just all the things that we don't know about this. And the more we learn, the more we figure out that we don't know. And this is, for me, is probably one of the most exciting things of just kind of birding today that really interests me. And I think it's one of those things that has some of the largest potential for growth. And when you look at technology and AI that we'll be looking at, and what our Echoes program is doing here to kind of document some of these birds. So there's so much that we can really learn that I want to talk about tonight. First thing I want to do is let me kind of stop sharing that for a second. I want to share again because I want you to listen to something. And most of you guys know that most of our birds migrate at night. And if you go out in the morning hours, you may see some of that diurnal migration that occurs. But most of our birds, they're going in that darkness, and it would absolutely blow your mind to see the birds when they're flying by at night. And I'm here to tell you guys tonight that every single one of your homes is eligible for eBird hotspot status, because at night, the same rare birds that you go to Goose Pond for, that you go to Eagle Creek for, the Indiana Dunes, are flying right over your house. The king rails, the barn owls, the whimbrels, the upland sandpipers, all these amazing birds that we go out and seek are using the airspace overhead. And I like to think that on the biggest migration nights, if you were to literally like just turn on the sun, it would blow your mind how many birds are in the sky at once. And first, once you turned on the sun and they all start crashing from the light that comes on, and then reorient, it would just it's so incredible. And I got evidence. So I'm going to show you that what's going on underneath your house, and how you can actually participate and document one of the biggest migration events that occurs that we often don't realize is actually happening. And let me share. I want to share. Let me go back to sharing that screen. Yeah, I think that should be. Yeah, there we go. That echo screen. Let me pull up. What I want you to do kind of before we get started is if you've ever been out at night to hear migration, it's way up in the sky and we often don't hear it, but it starts early in the season. As soon as you get to March, it's still cold out. Spring migration's starting. And I remember just a recording that we were able to record here locally on, I got the date, what is it, March 11th of this year. And I'm going to play this, but and just imagine stepping out of your house on on a cold March night, wrapped in quiet shadows. And at first there's only the wind, but then you hear that faint hoot, kind of a hollow kind of honking drifting from the sky. Another one follows, and then you start to hear more. It kind of builds like a gathering tide, and that the silence unravels as you start to hear the flock of tundra swans breaking across that night, calling in chorus, wings sweep, unseen overhead. Yet their voices can be heard echoing through that darkness, and they're literally ancient travelers pushing northward. And as the tundra swans start, they initiate what will be the next 12 weeks of millions of birds overhead. And many of them will not have the volume that these tundra swans have, but so many of them will have different call notes that we are learning now to actually be able to identify. So let's start and kind of talk about what we've actually been doing. And so, do birds migrate at night? Absolutely. We know that they do, 80% of them. So that's literally millions of our birds. They do it to avoid predators, save energy, look at the wind speeds. There's so many different reasons that birds are going to choose to travel at night over the daytime. And how they do it? Well, they're all the ways they do it. Everything but kind of the Garmin. They are using their own GPS unit, but they're using. We do know that birds have faint magnetite in their brain. Many species kind of use that. And we've had tests where you can kind of turn that on and off, and a bird in a tested situation starts flying a different direction. So they're using magnetite, they're using moonlight, stars. So when you say they're using the stars, like they got a constellation, yeah, literally, we think this is they're connecting stars. That they may not be seeing the Big Dipper as we see it, but they are seeing some sort of constellations that they use to align themselves and begin their migration each night. Here's a little video here. It's I hope Whitney took this. I hear owl tooting, so it looks like it was probably an animal banding night. And look at that. It's like play that up in the upper part of there. You can actually see the bird flying right there. So just kind of there's evidence of that nocturnal migration that we have going on. See if you recognize this site. So this is one of our audio recorders that we use, but more importantly is in the distance there, you might recognize the observation tower, the old green tower at the Indiana Dunes State Park. If you've never been there, it's a 30-foot observation tower that sits on a 60-foot dune, so you're almost 100 feet above Lake Michigan when you're standing on that strong platform watching the bird migration. And it's a site for what we've been running now for over a dozen years, the Indiana Dunes Longshore Migration Count. And what we've been documenting is about 250,000 birds in migration at sunrise every morning during the first 4 hours of the day. And here, these are birds that are starting their migration for the morning. A lot of them are leaving the wetlands. A lot of the blackbirds start moving and kind of picking up. But you also capture a lot of nocturnal, a lot of night migration that is still finishing up, because there are so many birds. I keep saying there's so many birds. There's so many birds in the sky that by the time sunrise comes out, you can't have them all back down. And so they're all kind of still working their way down for the first couple hours. And so this is an amazing sight to witness both diurnal and nocturnal migration. So much so that, the 250,000 birds now, we've documented over 3 million birds, over the last 12 years or so, that we actually set up a Doppler radar one year with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at this site. So if you've been there, there's a little kind of sidewalk that leads you up there and a little treatment plant. And so we kind of put it in there, plugged it in, and it ran a radar where it would run sweeps this way. So it just kind of goes left and right like a traditional Doppler radar, and it's kind of picking up bird activity out in the distance. And then it had a vertical radar, and it was kind of a funky looking spinning thing that would actually check. And by going up into the air, it would get the elevation of the different signatures that it was detecting, whether it be birds, insects, bats, or rain. And so the data from there, let me show you and try to interpret what we got. And so this was a particular night that we ran it in 2017, I believe. And so on that night, this is the night of May 17th to May 18th. So at this point right here, you're looking at about 11 p.m. Central Time. And this is a radar view. You might recognize there's Lake Michigan. So right there, if you kind of zoom in there, you kind of squint and see the parking lot for the west lot there at the Dune State Park. And then you see a color wheel in the upper right corner. So the color wheel represents the direction of travel. And so every little streak you see was a pass of the radar. So about a 15-second time span. And so that streak represents a bird. So every streak is a single bird that was in migration at 11 p.m. on the night of May 17th to May 18th at the Indiana Dunes this particular year that we did this. 2017 is what it looks like. And so you can see in the darkness, everyone's going north. We had a south wind, birds are flying north, and in that darkness, as soon as they get to the edge of Lake Michigan, they just keep on going. They don't know any difference between it. And so this is the height of migration, and it's hard to imagine how many birds are actually out there. Let me go now to just a little bit later. This is 2:45 a.m. So let's go back. There's 11 p.m. There's 2:45. Here's 3:45 a.m. So what we actually have going on here is you kind of notice that there's massively a lot less birds than we had 11 p.m. Let's go back. 1, 2, there's 11 p.m. 1, 2, there's 3 a.m. So notice that not only are birds starting to descend, they're already making their way down. We're starting to get hints of light. And the reason I know that is because look at the direction of travel. Birds are heading due north until they hit the lake. And now they're orienting to fly alongside the lake because they can see that is a large open water body and they don't want to fly over it. So they're starting to orient themselves. In this case, looks like they were flying kind of to the northeast there to kind of follow along the shoreline. And finally, let me show you one more. This is 8 a.m. And this is when our longshore counters are out. Dawn has come out. We've been counting for about an hour. We're like, oh my gosh, this was a south wind that had one of the most incredible bird migration nights. And look at all the birds in the sky. But had we just been out there 4 hours earlier, 6 hours earlier to really see what that true migration is going on. And so just through that radar alone, it really demonstrates what is going on at night. Take a look at this. This is kind of showing a little bit more about those flyways, kind of talk about where they're moving through there. And so right now, as those birds are coming through, once it gets to darkness, take out those colors. Land is land, and these birds are just kind of flying out there over that open space. How many birds? We kind of talked about that. You saw that migration. But now we have options like such as Birdcast and Merlin and all the different things that the Cornell lab has that offer us to be able to document these birds. And this is kind of an example of a single night that they've been able to produce through analyzing the actual individual radar stations, looking at detecting what are birds, what's rain, and they're able to produce these after maps that show the migration each night, and to be able to produce forecasts for us to be able to follow migration. There's another one. This kind of shows what a Doppler radar would look like. So Birdcast is basically turning that Doppler into something more visible, something more public output for us to be able to see. And so what Doppler radar is kind of the original source of this. And so this is where you see these kind of donut patterns. And these donut patterns come up and they kind of represent birds in flight. And they represent how that moves, where as those birds kind of are moving out there and that radar is reaching, as that radar reaches out, it goes higher and higher. And so as that donut grows, that's showing us birds that are actually gaining in altitude. And as that donut shrinks, then that shows us that we're only detecting the birds that are closer to the radar, which happen to be lower. And so the Doppler is just another great way that shows us bird migration versus traditional weather, which in this image, we actually see off the coast of Florida what actual radar rain looks like versus bird detections. I'm sorry, let me grab a quick drink here before I continue. Sorry about that. Got a little bug in my throat. If you go to Birdcast, this is what a traditional migration dashboard looks like. We're looking at total birds that have flown over. This is a night in Fayette County here. And so we actually can see not only how many birds have flown, what the expected birds are, but we can actually see hour by hour where that altitude was and how many birds are actually out there. There's our birds in flight. Little delay, and we see it start picking up after 9 p.m., peaks around 12, and notice that we're already starting to decline. So after 3 a.m., there isn't a full flight right till dawn. It already starts to kind of slow down. Altitude. This is kind of important for nocturnal bird sounds because if a bird is really, really super high, even if it's up there a half mile away, even the most sensitive microphones aren't going to be able to record it. Birds in flight. So what we can actually look at is over the course of the season and what the most amount of birds were. And we can actually look at where those major migration nights were. You combine all of that, and this is really kind of a new wealth of information that birders have. And it not only allows them to kind of prepare on when they might go out, but then we can use this for education, awareness, to spread lights out events when we might want to make people aware of bird collision events that might be going on. And it also alerts us to when bird migration may be going on if we're trying to document some of that. So this has really been kind of a revolutionary resource today for folks. If you haven't seen this, there is the Aero Eco Lab. Formerly, this is with Colorado State University, has been able to integrate, and they've been doing a lot of migration monitoring, and they do a lot of detections as well. And they've been able to produce these really specific forecasts directly over the cities. They have a whole map of the country that will have each state, and you can click on each one of those, and it'll give you the forecast for up to 3 days and when you have lights out alerts. And so you may see this shared on some of the Indiana Audubon social media accounts. But the Aero Eco Lab was kind of put up by a few guys, and one of the major leads for it is Kyle Horton, formerly of Colorado State, who is now transferring to Purdue University. So we're going to see the Aero Ecology Lab move to Indiana here in the next couple months. So we're pretty happy about that. And of course, one of the big reasons that we're talking about this is just there's a lot of threats to birds, and we see a lot of needs in downtown events where birds are flighting into glass, but not just glass. There's power lines, wind turbines, and just everyday residences out there account for a lot of the birds that are being lost. So there's so many different issues tied to this that make it such an important topic to be able to study. So let's introduce a little bit about what we've been doing now for not quite our pilot year. Last year was the pilot year for our Echoes of the Night Sky. And basically, we've known that millions of birds are flying over our heads every night, but we're only documenting, as we've seen, a small amount of those that are going overhead. And a lot of those are really secretive in nature and hard to find them, hard to document them. And so the use of ARUs, or these autonomous recording units, such as you see there, really kind of give us a head start into understanding not only the birds that are migrating overhead, but we get a better idea of when those timelines are, when they're going by. And so we are doing spring and the fall. You see 3 different units there that we use. And basically what they are is they're microphones set up to schedules. And so what we want to do is be able to record as much nocturnal migrations going on overhead so that we can kind of build this awareness and kind of teach folks about it. And so I got one right here. This is a little SM micro unit. These things are pretty small. They open up, they got little batteries in them. And there's this one actually hooks up to an app, and you can kind of program the schedule, and they'll do little hour recordings. You see some larger units there that you can deploy. The big one there that has looks like ears, that's called the SM4, and that is about an $800 recording unit. It's a pretty big beast, and they're pretty hardcore. They can withhold a lot of weather out there. In fact, we used to have these units recording black rails out at Kinky Sands. So they put up with bison rubbing up on them. So they're pretty strong. You can put those out there and deploy them for weeks at a time. And then all we do is wait till nightfall. And after it gets dark, we just turn these things on and they record all night long until about an hour before the sunrise. Another unit there, it's called an audio moth. It's another kind of more of a rudimentary recording device that also can kind of plug in, set up, and then you just pull off a little SD card. And that SD card is going to have your different sound files on it that you can then start to do some analysis on what actually went overhead overnight. Here's just kind of a general location of in the last year where we've had some of our participants of the Echoes of Night Sky. I mean, it's somewhat technical. We're trying to take a more of a technical scientific research on birds and turn it into more kind of citizen science. In a lot of ways that Cornell has done with eBird and Merlin, and they've been able to integrate more of that citizen science into the research that they're able to capture. We're doing the same thing just for nocturnal flight counts, or NFCs as we call them. There's just some examples of how they're set up around the state. So just a simple recording unit set out somewhere remotely where it can just capture the sound straight up. So we really don't want to get the sound in the surrounding areas. We just want to have the straight up sound where birds are flying overhead. In fact, some of that side sound, trains and horns and such, and raccoons fighting at night can be more of a trouble to try to filter out. So we really just want to capture that nocturnal sound. A couple examples of how some of the folks have done it. I, fortunately, on the upper right corner, have a second floor that has access right to a roof. So I just open the window up and lay it right out there on the roof, and I can bring it in the next day versus others that may have to deploy a ladder or put it up on their chimney to get the best angle to be able to record from. So how do you deal? Yeah, there we go. There's a great upland sandpiper that was recorded over one of our sites. And so what we're doing is a lot of these birds that are calling overhead, you can recognize the sound. It's the same sound. If you pull up the Sibley app, you're going to hear it. And so, this one, as I play it, I didn't play it. Let me go back. Here we go again. Yeah, upland. So real familiar sound. If you pull up the Sibley, you're going to hear it. Other birds, it's a little more complicated. And we have some species, such as some of the warblers and the sparrows, where they don't give their full song. You're not going to have a yellow warbler going, sweet, 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 I'm so sweet, as they're flying overhead. It's just a single chip note. And I used to look at these chip notes as, wow, it's a chip note. It tells me it's a warbler, and that's all I can do with it. And I remember it was 2018. I was on one of my first trips to Costa Rica, and I was with a birder we had just met by the name of Juan Diego Vargas, and he heard a chip, and he goes, yellow warbler. I go, no way. How did you know that? And he had just, through practice, learned to tell the different chip notes of the different warblers. And just as we're learning to do that now, and now today, some 30 years later, I can, since I first started birding, I can do about half dozen, warblers by their chip notes, but no way I could do them all by their chip notes. But that's where there is enough distinction that with the AI technology, we're using something called Nighthawk. And Nighthawk is a specially trained program that looks at audio clips and then can identify those chip notes and can tell us whether it's a redstart, whether it's a yellow warbler, whether it's a white-throated sparrow. They all have very distinct signatures that to our ears, we may not be able to tell, but to the AI technology, it can. And let me see what else we got here. Here's another one. This is a fun one. Not a sound that you may hear a lot or totally recognize with this species, because for the dick sissel, they're usually more that dick, 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 sissel, sissel, but they have a very distinct flight call. And you can hear this during the day, but this is a call that they give at night. Play one more time. You can hear it, and real distinct, and you can see that signature. Let's get another one. Oh, here's a fun one. As you can see from the bottom, it's an American redstart. So this is the redstart chip note. And if we can I stop it? Oh, well, let me stop it. But look at that. There's a V. It's a perfect V. And we can look at the frequency, how many kilohertz that it does it at. That is a very distinct call. And so if the technology sees that, even if your ear is like, oh, is that a different warbler? I can't quite tell the little chip note, because they are really hard to tell. The technology does it. The spectrograms allow us to read it and identify it. And this one's really easy to identify as a American redstart. Versus, let's see, yeah, it's like a white-throated sparrow. And so very different call. Look how long this one is, and very different sounding than that American redstart. And out in the field, you may hear one chip from another and think they sound a lot alike. But once you really start to look at them, you can see why they're so different. And I think a lot of times seeing the spectrogram helps you understand that why that sounds different too. And to me, in my ear, it helps me distinguish it again later when I hear it. And you get other sounds. This is it's a nocturnal flight sound that maybe some of you guys have heard if you've been out woodcocking, in addition to the normal paint sound. So would this be a bird that we would normally count as part of our protocol of a nocturnal flight count? That's kind of tough to say. This is a bird that probably has come in and is on territory now, but we still kind of include these incidental recordings in our checklist because it's a bird that's present that eBird likes to document as well. So here's kind of what we did last year. We produced eBird trip reports amongst the different participants that had the recorders, and it was no small task to be able to do this. So you're taking hours and hours of recording. You're running it through the software. It gives you a little spreadsheet and tells you, but then you still have to go into that audio file, find that sound file, confirm the sound, clip it out to create the different checklists. So there's a lot of work documenting all these birds with the recorders and the technology that we have today. But you can see as just through our recorders, over 20 species of warblers, a dozen species of sparrows. We've had some shorebirds, thrushes, and a variety of other birds that were all documented. 62 species last year were all picked up just on the microphones after dark at these houses. And so none of these were at a state park, nature center site. These were all just everybody's backyards. In fact, a lot of participants would say, can I really do it? I'm by a highway or I'm by the airport. And it's amazing. Things get quiet enough that you can document birds migrating even by some of the busiest of sites. So some amazing results that we got just last year, part of the kind of inaugural pilot season for it. So many different unique birds that we don't realize. The cuckoos are a really fun one that come by quite a bit. They have a distinct call. And obviously some birds call more at night than other species. And so some species just don't call at all, and we just don't get to record them very much. So there are going to be some sort of biases in the data as we collect it. But the better and better we get at identifying these calls, and the more people we have out there doing it, the more we're going to understand this nocturnal migration and kind of align and kind of almost take that data that Birdcast is producing and then ground truth it and produce the results that way as well. Take a look at this. This was just in the last year. These were all either documented state endangered or special concern species that have all been picked up on the microphone by our participants. And I think those state endangered ones, the four up top, are some of the biggest surprises that we get. Uplands during a couple-week window. We had several last year in April and again in August that came through. Some of them right in the Indianapolis, Marion County area. And these are, places that just haven't seen records of upland sandpipers in years, and yet they were flying overhead, and we got them. Bitterns, least bitterns, black-crowned night herons have all been documented in the last year. Let me just introduce one other idea for you guys. And if you're thinking about, you may want to kind of help document more of this nocturnal migration. The Echoes of the Night Sky program is always looking for new participants. We'll have a fall program that goes out, and we have some of the different devices that we lend out to the participants. And so as a participant, you will deploy the device, you get the recordings, bring them in, analyze it, and then you can create the eBird checklist. You create your own eBird account for these kind of NFC or remote sightings that you get, and you're able to document them in real time, and you share the checklist with us for those trip reports. It's a lot of technology, though, getting in and kind of learning some of the Python coding sometimes if you're trying to get some of this Nighthawk program to work. there is some devices that are out there today that you may have an interest in if you don't want to get into that technology yet. And there is kind of an intro level AI listening, and there's a lot of devices out there. There was a Indiana Audubon Cardinal article that we had just a couple months ago looking at a few of these devices, and one of them being the Haiku Box, the brand new Terra Listens, and then the Bird Weather Puck. And so we had an article that kind of looked at all three of those devices. And there's a screenshot of the puck. And so these things are really incredible using BirdNet technology where they're able to record in real time 24/7. And so these devices are out there in your yard. And so I took a screenshot of a device that we've been testing at Whitney Yorger's yard in Zionsville. This was an hour ago. And so she's got goldfinches galore, followed by blue jays, chipping sparrows, and a lot of yellow-throated warblers are there. And so those are detections. So that's how many times that bird called that this unit picked it up today. And so as you scroll through, you'll see some, what is it, 67 species that it thinks that it's identified. And you can listen to every one of those calls. And that's just another way that you can kind of get into some of this autonomous recording without getting into the full level. I don't think these devices are quite as good as our ARU units that we're using that have more of the specialized microphones for it. So these things are really good at listening to birds in your neighborhood, and they are picking up some of them. The puck unit that I got out right now that I've been testing is getting white-throated sparrows, Savannah sparrows, and so it's picking up killdeers. And so it is picking up some of the nocturnal migration, and I would assume things like upland sandpipers and whimbrels would be picked up by it too. So as we continue to test these units through the spring, we'll be able to report back on how these can be used for NFC work for folks that are interested in more of a basic kind of unit. But look into any of these sites. You can go to the Haiku, look up Terra, look up the Puck if you want to learn more about any of these devices. And we can provide a link in the after video notes on that article if you want to learn more about this. So really what I'm saying is that we're on this cusp of this technological revolution that's already been occurring. Things like Merlin and such, that's revolutionizing birding. The recording of bird sounds, and then specifically when these birds are moving, that nocturnal migration is so revolutionary, and it's just so neat to be on the edge of the seat of that as these new devices come online, such as the puck. But if you want to learn more about the Indiana Audubon program, you can go to indianaaudubon.org/NFCS, and that'll take it to our Echoes of the Night Sky program. NFCS being, of course, nocturnal flight counts in plural. So you can check out there, learn more about it. There's a beginner's guide that kind of talks about some of the different protocols, some of the different equipment that you would need. So if you're interested, you can kind of read more about whether you could meet the requirements of the program. And then there's actually a full guide. So if there's folks that maybe you have your own recorder and you want to help participate, you want to help submit some checklists, it breaks it down by the different types of recorders that are out there. So really, we're just trying to, the more the merrier. We want to get more people out there. We want to get people learning about how to record nocturnal flight counts and to be able to document these birds, because there's so many cool ones that are out there. And I had just a couple other recordings recently that I wanted to share while I was here. And so let me share my screen and show you this one. This is a recording that I just received. And I'm going to open it up a little bit more so you guys can see it. This came in from one of our participants, Jeremy Prochelle, at the Cope Environmental Center. You know where the Cope Environmental Center is? It's just outside of Richmond, Indiana. And he recorded this on April 13th, so just 2 weeks ago. And I got to make sure. That's what I'm going to do, you guys. I'm going to make you guys dizzy. I'm going to share again just because I want to make sure I'm sharing this sound on this one. Okay, yeah. Okay, bring it back. Okay, so let's see if you can identify this sound. You guys hear it? Kind of faint. Here's what I'm going to do. I want it even louder. Let's crank this puppy up. Oh, won't go that high. Listen now. Play a couple more times. You guys hear what it was? Hopefully you can hear it. Barn owl. And so that was a barn owl flying over the Cope Environmental Center. And that was not on those list of birds I showed you that we documented last year. It should be because it is a state endangered species. As you know, there's just a limited number of nests. And what's so cool is not only it's like, oh my gosh, you got a barn owl flying over your, wherever you're at. But that was not just the first, but that was the third one that we've had in the last 2 weeks, all at very different stations. One down in Monroe County, and then we just had another one on the south side of Indianapolis that was recorded calling as well. And so, guys, there's barn owls in your backyard and we don't even know it. And they're flying over in migration. Maybe we all have one and we just don't know it. Let me show you another one that I got. And this ties into one of our own little programs. Use that out. Here we go. So this was just recently documented a couple days ago by one of my friends, and you're going to hear the kind of the vert call of a wood thrush. But as this wood thrush was singing, here's the thing: this wood thrush started singing his full song, the Eole. So of course, as I said, as we learn more, it just raises more questions. So is this a bird singing his song in flight, or did he stop briefly to sing it and then continue? Take a listen. This is in the middle of the night. And so what are these birds doing when they're out there flying like that, just giving those kind of calls? Let's see. Do I got another one here? I thought I maybe had another one to show you. I got something cool. There's so many cool ones. In fact, what we have, let me just, I'll show you this last screen I have. Let me share my screen. Not that. There we go. If you go to, let me show you the echoes page. If you go to echoes, this is the echoes of the night sky that I was talking about. So if you go there, you can kind of learn about the project, the goals, some of those links I talked about. And then all the way down at the bottom, you can see the data. And so everything that's being submitted is through citizen science. So it's going into eBird. So not only do researchers have access to it, but everyone else has access to all these different sightings. And if I go click on the April one, you can see right there that, we've already had, some 53 species just in the month of April from 179 different checklists. And so as I'm scrolling through this list here, you can see the different cuckoos, king rails. Let me click on that one. That one's, I got to see this one. Yeah, really cool. I want a king rail over my house. And then start to look at the numbers too. Half a dozen bitterns already. We've had these night herons, all these green herons coming over. 17 grasshopper sparrows. Boy, it's hard to find one sometimes. White-throated sparrows, savanna. So we're starting to see some of the numbers tick up. The fall is where it gets really impressive. Is you're going to have something like 400, 500, 600, 700 things like Swainson's thrushes and the white-throated sparrows. And then we can really start to look at that data and then compare it with birdwatcher data on the ground and actually see is our peak migration lining up with their peak migration. And then we can kind of look at where we're having some of the biggest issues too. As we kind of grow this program, it starts to connect the dots. And so that wood thrush, maybe that wood thrush had one of the chasing melody tags on him and he's heading to Mary Gray or something. So what we find is that these programs, in addition to having their own kind of standalone value, is it really starts to connect the dots of the birds. And every project, whether it be Project Downnet, Chasing Melody, the Longshore Flight Project, or Echoes of the Night Sky, really connect those dots to tell the story for birds and kind of help maybe make those birds better through what we're able to do, and then some of the conservation work that we're able to connect with it. And so that's kind of what we've been doing. If you didn't know, migration at night is the biggest, coolest thing that you didn't know that you should know more about. If you want to learn more about the Echoes of the Night Sky, Indiana Audubon .org/NFCS, you can learn more about it. You can message if you're interested in being a fall participant. We'll be taking sign-up soon to add some participants. You get the unit, you get to go out there. It takes a little bit of the technological background to kind of read that primer and see if you can meet all the requirements for it. But with that, is there any questions that anyone has? It's been kind of quiet. No one's piped up, but if you have any questions, I'd love to hear it. We'll have a recording for this if you want to follow it up later for folks that aren't able to join us for tonight. But I encourage you to get out, and if you're not even in the program, some of these different devices that are out there, like the Haiku or the Puck device, are really allowing this sort of science to go to the masses, and that's really what makes me most excited right now. Thanks, Shelley. It's such a cool topic. In fact, I'm going to call someone out. Robin, if you don't mind. Robin Jansen is with us tonight, and she's one of our participants. And you're not just recording up at your house, but you're a little even more remotely. Can you tell us where you're recording at?
This spring, I decided to go west and partner with Sherry McCullough at the Lye Creek Prairie Burn. So we've got the recorder. If any of you go out there, it's sitting on top of the observation deck that's recently been restored and rehabbed. So I go out about every week, every other week, and get the SD card and download all the audio onto my computer. I bring my computer back to the where the recorder is, and then I go home and run the Nighthawk program and start working through it. So tomorrow Sherry's bringing the card to me, and we're going to go through some files. So it's been really great fun.
Cool. Any what have been your favorite species that you've been able to record in just your time doing NFC work?
We had a couple weeks with some technical issues, but we've gotten an American bittern, black-crowned night heron, Sora, Henslow sparrow, Lincoln sparrow. So they're all favorites. They're all pretty awesome.
Cool. Sweet. That's where it's the newer devices, some of these, the ones that we're kind of testing out, like the Puck and stuff, require power. And that's great with the program of a lot of these remote units, is that you can deploy these almost anywhere to be able to get that kind of data. And a lot of these ones have longer battery lives than some of the powered ones too, that even do have some remote abilities. So really there's a variety of different kind of recording units that you can get into. And so if you're interested in more about the different kind of units, welcome to message us later, and we can kind of talk about the pros and cons of each of them, because there's so many out there on the market that folks can try. Great. Interesting. Cool. Thanks. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions?
Brad, I have a question. If you do participate in the program, are you given a unit to use?
Yes. So yeah, we lend you out a unit, and so we have about 15 units broken up between the different kinds. And so depending on kind of your site and location, you get assigned a unit. And then we have a coordinator that actually helps each week with the participants, kind of getting them through, answering any questions that they might have. There's a whole Facebook group that just does sounds. What is this? It's amazing all the weird sounds out there at night that are going on. Is that a bird? And then it turns out, well, it's a rabbit, or it's a raccoon, or it's a coyote. And there's all these different weird animal sounds too that we're logging. You learn a lot about who's walking around your neighborhood at night too, sometimes. And who's letting the dog out at midnight.
I did purchase one of the Terra Listens, and I wondered, I read your article, and that was very helpful. I I've been a little disappointed in it. I don't know if maybe I was expecting them to be farther along with what it could do. The reason I really tapped, excuse me, purchased it was the modus capability that's supposed to, and are you thinking that will do what it's supposed to do?
I think from what I heard that, from folks that have gotten a Terra, that seems to be the thing that they're most excited about is potential for identifying modus tags. And what is unclear right now is, what will be the range from the internal modus, and then there's like an external that you can be able to add on the additional range. If that comes in, and then how will that integrate into the modus.org network? How will then those will they show up on the Modus site as individual towers? So there's still a lot of questions on that. That is certainly the most exciting aspect, I think, for them, and why we're kind of holding out on it right now. If you're just trying to identify birds that are in your neighborhood, some of the other devices seem to be better. But I will point out that the hardware isn't wrong on any of those devices. The microphone, it's a lot of it's the technology, the BirdNet, and that's where it's the software that's being trained to identify birds, and where different updates come in and suddenly it starts doing better. So a same device may end up being a lot better in a couple months from now as software updates occur. So that is where I'm kind of remaining hopeful that we'll see some advancements as they kind of tweak it. But to your last point, I think, yeah, the Modus is probably the biggest thing that we're most excited about, that add-on that the other devices don't have.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. Be cool if everyone could have a Modus tower at their house, and just a $250 little device. So see if it comes to fruition. Yeah, thanks, April.
I'm excited that we can add animal sounds to our eBird checklists now, because there's some really fascinating animal sounds at night.
Yeah,
So
yeah. And it'd be nice just to have like a database then where you can go and then search and listen to different sounds to see it match up to something you heard. Right now, there just isn't a good place always for that.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. We got a busy migration. The microphones are going to be busy for the next 30 days. And we got a lot of programs and events coming up too. So hopefully the next couple of weeks, I'll be seeing some of you guys at the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival. We are at a record attendance this year as registration closes today. So if you're not registered today, you better get on it. There's still some openings for a few trips, a keynote, and maybe even some birds and brew. So it'll be a lot of great migration. And if you're over there by the bird tower, over that first image I showed you, watch for this. I will probably bring it down and try to do some migration monitoring this spring during the festival. So with that, we'll get a little recording here. You guys can watch. If you have any questions, we'll be around to answer them. So thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you around on the trail. Bye.